First, we have Frank Murphy Hall of Justice in Detroit, Michigan. Today, sentences are being handed down for the death of Jamelia Smith, the 3-year-old daughter of Jasmine Gordon, who is 25 years old, and Clifford Thomas, who is 34 years old. Jamelia was being watched by Thomas, who is not her father, when he alleges she hit her head and lost consciousness. The infant apparently suffered severe blunt force trauma injuries, but authorities declared her death to be a homicide. In addition to additional accusations, Gordon and Thomas were both convicted of criminally negligent homicide. To avoid having to repeat the impact statement process, Gordon and Thomas are in court today together. The deceased child's father, Dwayne Smith, is seated in the gallery, just off camera. Smith and the guy guilty of killing his daughter are separated by barely a few feet and not much else. He provides the impact statement when asked to do so. A closer look reveals that Smith entered the picture and obviously struck Thomas in the head. Gordon had a moment of emotion amidst the commotion and needed the assistance of her lawyer. It takes a number of sheriff's deputies to regain control. Judge Margaret Van Houten issues a cautionary note as the case continues. Thomas receives 2 sentences, 1 to 2 years for assaulting an officer and 57 months to 15 years for criminally negligent homicide. Gordon, who is in tears, pleads with the judge as Thomas is taken away. Judge Van Houten does not appear to be affected by the tears. For criminally negligent homicide, she gives Gordon a sentence of 7 to 15 years, and for first-degree child abuse, another 14 to 25 years. Judge Van Houten makes the decision not to charge Dwayne Smith in contempt of court for his outburst. Now, we have to travel to Cleveland, Ohio, where Michael Madison, a notorious serial killer, will be sentenced in the Cuyahoga County Common Pleas Court for the murder and disfigurement of 3 young ladies in Ohio. Madison was found guilty on 3 counts of murder and attempted murder. Van Terry, the father of one of Madison's victims, goes up to the podium during the hearing to provide a victim impact testimony. Mr. Terry is now only a few feet away from the man who mercilessly slaughtered his daughter, Shilda. He is giving Madison a direct look. Following Terry's release from custody without being charged, Madison is given his or her sentence by County Judge Nancy McDonald. Michael Madison has been given a death sentence and is currently residing on Ohio's Execution Row. In Pike, Mississippi, at the Pike County Justice Court, we begin. Sidney Newsom is standing in front of Southern District Judge Aubrey Rimes while being handcuffed and chained. He is accused of domestic violence. He seemed to be pretty at ease after looking over some documents and performing a brief dance. However, Newsom appears to become angry when the transport officer taps the table. His mother and brother then made their way into the courtroom. He immediately approaches them, but the officer repeatedly signals for him to stand in line. Then, Judge Rimes tells the family members to take their place. The paperwork is signed by Newsom, and after that, the officer gives the paperwork to Judge Rimes. Meanwhile, the defendant doesn't appear to be prepared to rest his case. As Newsom and the judge argue, the latter rapidly moves to have him dismissed from the case. Newsom, however, chooses against leaving just yet. Newsom lost it as the police tried to lead him back to the front door. He first smashes a stack of papers at the judge after grabbing them from the desk. 2 court employees flee the scene as documents fly everywhere, and Newsom's mother responds. For a brief period, the transport officer wrestles the defendant to the ground before overwhelming her. Then, he snatches up a phone and flings it at the judge, knocking over a computer monitor in the process. Judge Rimes decides to seize power after reaching his breaking point. Judge Rimes pins Newsom to the desk by himself as he continues tossing papers at him from Newsom. The defendant's brother then joins in, though it's not obvious if he's attempting to help the judge. 4 additional transport officials eventually arrive in the court. Finally, one of them takes Newsom outside. Judge Rhymes returns to the bench and reclines in his chair as 2 court clerks arrange the strewn papers, and one of them replaces the computer monitor. Rhymes resumes his work as the defendant's brother is dismissed from the courtroom. No criminal charges were brought against the brother. Sidney Newsom was also charged with contempt of court and was imprisoned for 48 hours. We will then proceed to Brea, Ohio for a probation hearing. William Demopoulos, an 18-year-old offender, is now on probation for criminally endangering a vehicle while it was not in his use and disrupting government business. Proceedings have not gone well so far since Demopoulos, as he refused to give the probation officer his cell phone, which has irritated Judge Chris Green. The defendant starts to back away when the judge gives the phone to a clerk. It appears like the teen is ready to give up his freedom in exchange for a phone. For Demopoulos, the judge breaks it down. The defendant modifies his story after finding little success. Demopoulos doesn't seem willing to cooperate despite the fact that deputies were drawing towards him, and as soon as he jumps over the table, they tackle him to the ground. The judge revokes the defendant's probation, and after charging him with assaulting a police officer, he is sentenced to 40 days in jail. Our next stop is Adelaide, Australia, for a hearing. Daniel Nicholson, a 35-year-old father of 4, has been free on bail while waiting to face charges related to guns. He is in court today to learn whether or not Magistrate Sue O'Connor will let him continue to be on pre-trial detention. Nicholson turns to his lawyer, who may be seen as being taken aback by the decision. Magistrate O'Connor interrupts him before he can receive a response, though. Moments later, maybe recognizing that he is about to be arrested, Nicholson chooses to bail himself out of the predicament. Within the area known as the dock, Nicholson climbs atop a table and punches one of the officers who is attempting to hold him back. He manages to escape their grasp and climb up to the top of the partition before launching himself onto a nearby table and into the officer's arms. A lady pleads Nicholson's case as the courtroom becomes chaotic. He makes progress toward the entrance, but before he gets there, additional officers join in. Later, Daniel Nicholson entered a plea of guilty to 2 counts of recklessly injuring an emergency worker and to trying to escape from custody. At the time, he acknowledged using crystal meth, claiming he was simply freaked out, to use his own words. Nicholson was given a 21-month prison term with a 1-year window for parole. In relation to the initial weapon allegation, he entered a guilty plea and was penalized for $320. The Chandler Municipal Court's Detention Center in Chandler, Arizona, is where we will make our last stop. Kevin Lyons, 23, has been taken away by detention officers so that he can appear before a judge. Lyons was detained in Chandler after being found guilty of drunk driving. The fact that Lyons is handcuffed in the front should also be noted. He later stated in court records that officers offered to take the handcuffs off. He argued that he kept them on for a particular purpose. He decides not to comply as the male cop tries to prod him. Lyons resists the 2 policemen attempts to subdue him. Lyons loses a boot in the fight but keeps kicking and punching. He then fires a shot which causes the female cop to fall back. This is when the handcuffs and Lyons' justification for keeping them on come into play, if you pay close attention. If you take another look at it, you'll find Lyons successfully puts the male cop in a potentially fatal strangulation by slipping his handcuffs around his neck. More than 20 seconds have passed and the clock is ticking, but the policeman keeps fighting. He eventually escapes Lyons' hold and turns the tables. The male cop injured himself on his cheek and on the back of his ear as he struggled to free himself from Lyons' chokehold. The cuffs on Lyons are carefully repositioned behind his back as a 3rd cop joins to help. According to court records, Lyons was previously found guilty of assaulting officers. Therefore, they take extra care to tie the handcuffs behind his back this time. Lyons may be in check, but that doesn't mean he'll leave without a fight. Lyons is taken back to his cell, where he yells at the male officer once more. Lyons is charged with 2 more counts of aggravated assault on a correctional officer and is lodged in the Maricopa County Jail. I sincerely hope you liked the video. Post your ideas in the comments section below. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so, and press the notification bell. Until the next video, take care.